Time now for Truth or Fake, our daily fact-checking segment in association with the France 24 Observers. I'm joined by James Creedon. Hi there, James.
Hey, Tom.
Now, let's begin with some images circulating online that seem to show Nazi symbols in Ukraine. But these images have been shared out of context, I gather.
They certainly have, and so the mudslinging of Nazi affiliations or being sympathising with Nazi ideas. We've seen a lot of that from both sides, it must be said, in this conflict, with varying degrees of untruth. And in this case, certainly we know that Vladimir Putin justified the war by saying that neo-Nazi elements that there was a genocide going on in the Russian-speaking regions to the east of Ukraine, and this was a preemptive attempt to prevent genocide from taking place at the hands of neo-Nazis. Obviously, that has been largely debunked. But it is true, just by way of contextualizing, that there has been a Nazi problem in Ukraine in the past. On the eve of World War II, Ukraine was home to one of the largest Jewish communities in Europe. By the end, more than half would perish. So this historical problem was there with Nazi sympathizers. When German troops took control of Kiev in 1941, some of them were seen as being quite welcome. Soon after, nearly 34,000 Jews were rounded up and marched to the field. So there is a history of Nazi, I suppose, Nazi sympathising in Ukraine, and indeed the Azov regiment, which is quite notorious. It's a far-right regiment. They were integrated into elements of the Ukraine armed forces and are seen as having elements of Nazism in their philosophy. So that's just by way of context, but certainly it has been that piece of information and that context has been largely exaggerated, I think, in the context of the information war. And that's where we've seen fake information or information that may have elements of truth taken out of context circulating online. Let's take a look at this video. Now, what they're saying here is that the image speaks for itself. That's the Nazi symbol, the swastika on a stairway in this commercial, in this mall in Kiev. Now, actually, what was going on there in reality is this was a hack on the computer system of that particular mall, and the mall published a Facebook post explaining what had happened. This goes back to 2019. It was a projection light that the system of this mall was hacked, and that was a projection on the stairwell, and the mall was very quick to distance itself from that symbol. Of course, even if people involved in the management of a mall had these sort of political views, it's kind of unlikely that they're going to project a swastika on the stairwell of their mall. So it's common sense would indicate that it's false, and indeed a little bit of digging, reverse image searches, brings us back to this news story from 2019 and the fact that the mall was distancing themselves from that. So that's bogus claim number one of Nazi affiliation. Here is another image showing the Ukrainian flag alongside the Nazi flag. Again, common sense should indicate that if it's a public building or an embassy, that they're probably not going to do that, even if it was true, even if the affiliations were true. The United States of America always supported white supremacy and Nazi as NATO. This is Ukraine white supremacy. That is a scene from a film that was filmed back in 2011. It was called Match. It was a Russian-Ukrainian collaboration, and the director of that film was a guy called Andrei Malyakov, and that's another scene from that same film. So completely bogus again. And just the final example of these bogus Nazi affiliation claims is this image. Again, you can see here in a tweet with the News Weekly here in France, Le Point, taking an image of the Ukrainian President Zelensky and zooming in on an insignia on his uniform. That is actually from the Ukrainian army, the Ukrainian armed forces, and it is, while it might bear some similarities to some Nazi symbols such as this one, right, it's clearly quite distinct and quite different apart from the cross shape. So lots of bogus information circulating online, because of a broader context where Nazism is being mentioned, with vague elements of truth there. They have been believed by many and shared.
Okay, well, that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks,
for today's edition of Truth or Fake. James Creedon, thank you so much.